Hi, so today I'm going to paint a watercolor portrait on, we're using traditional watercolor medium and some colored inks. Hi, my name is Luis Escobar. I'm a storyboard artist from the Simpsons television show. I've been working on the show for over 25 years now, and I'm here to empower you. So I've kind of been thinking about doing a little bit more traditional art stuff. And since I kind of had to do a postcard portrait anyway that I've been doing, and I was going to do it in the same style that I have been for the last couple of months, I decided why not do it on camera so that everybody can see my process and what I've been doing. And this kind of builds up on, if you've been watching the last couple of videos that I've been uploading, I've been doing a lot of 5-minute figure drawing head drawings. And so what this does is it builds on that concept of drawing portraits. But this time I take a little bit more time, and then I show you how doing the 5-minute portraits I could build from that into doing traditional head drawings using the same kind of concepts, but using traditional media that is very, very different, like watercolor, like pen and ink. So that's what this is going to be. So let's get started. Hi. So I messed up as I was recording this video. I narrated the entire thing only to realize after I had finished the recording that I didn't record the audio. I hadn't turned on my mic, so I'm re-recording the audio right now. So you're gonna see me wiggling my fingers and doing all kinds of stuff, and it's not gonna match so much what I'm saying right now. Okay, so I remember at this point I was kind of talking about the type of portrait that I'm going to be using. So the portrait here over on the left that I put up here, this is what I'm going to be using as reference. So when I'm using this kind of portrait as what am I looking for? Well, it really depends on what I want to do. So what I really feel like doing. In this case, I'm trying to do something that's a little bit more representational, and I'm looking for something that's very dramatic. This is not always the case, and also something that I haven't done before, a different expression that I haven't done. I don't want to necessarily repeat myself, although sometimes that's okay. So in this case, I really like this portrait because it's so dramatic, so it's so high in contrast. The expression is something I haven't done before. She's kind of looks a little bit upset. The picture's in black and white, so I really like that it's in black and white because it just kind of simplifies everything for me. But definitely the drama of the photo in this case is extremely helpful for me because the lighting is so good, and it's a Rembrandt photo. It's lit like a Rembrandt, and I think when I talk about it, I will do. I'll talk about that later. So here I'm showing you the pencil I'm using. It's a red. It's a carmine red color erase pencil. It just basically means that I could erase it. And this is kind of what I used to use also when I was doing Simpson stuff. Here, this is the ink I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using a brown ink. And in order to place said ink, I'm going to be using this crow quill right here. It's just a standard crow quill. And let's see. And then I'm going to be painting. So this is my rag. I use this rag to wipe and clean my crow quill. And let's see, what else am I going to put? Oh, here, and then my watercolors. Okay, so this is the watercolors I'm going to be using. The watercolors I am going to use here is with this water brush, which is half empty. I'm going to fill it up later, but I use a water brush to do my watercolor, and then I will talk about how I use the water brush as opposed to a regular brush. I'm just so used to using the water brush. All right, so the very first thing I got to do is oh, and this is the pad I use, watercolor postcard pad. I found that the quality of the paper is not always consistent. The last pad I used was kind of horrible. All right. So here we go. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just put in a with the red colored pencil. Okay, so here's one of the reasons why I use red, especially with portrait, is because once it gets wet and the color pencil gets wet and I don't rub down or erase the line, the red kind of mixes a little bit with the water, with the watercolor and the water, and that's okay because red is complementary to the skin tone, right? And so if there's some red in the water, and it gets mixed up and makes it a little bit more red, that's okay. I don't mind that. That's actually works for me in this case. All right. So very, very careful. Okay, so this part of the process is basically no different than the head portrait 5-minute drawings that I tend to do. So if you've been paying attention to the figure drawing, the head drawing portrait videos that I've been doing, this process is exactly the same. I'm doing exactly what I tend to do there. The difference is because now I have some time as opposed to when I'm doing this sort of thing for 5 minutes, is that that I can take my time. I don't have to rush. And the other thing that I tend to do is that I tend to use an eraser. So I will show you the eraser soon, I believe, because that's kind of what I was talking about here. I'm almost oh, there it is. So here's the eraser that I tend to use. It's a really horrible looking nappy kneaded eraser, but I like the kneaded erasers because they don't get rid of a ton of the pigment. It still leaves a little bit of the line work there, and it doesn't lift too much of the paper off. And I will get to that soon because I do end up erasing quite a bit. So here in this is where I start kind of working out the features. And the way that I work out features when I'm doing this in lay-in of all the features and all the head and drawing the head is I'm thinking about it anatomically and structurally, but I'm also observing the shadow patterns that are being created by the reference. And so I'm looking at the reference very, very carefully, but I'm also thinking about the structure and the anatomy. So the shadow shapes that I'm placing in right here are shadow shapes that are not only there in the reference, but also I'm judiciously putting there, understanding why they're there. Like what are they describing? What plane of the eye, what plane of the face is happening here? And I start erasing here because this other eye is giving me a ton of trouble. This eye over here, I'm trying to make sure they line up correctly. If the trick is to have the eye not be too high up, not be too far down, but to be lined up right. And even here, as you can see, this eye is once again way too high, so I will end up erasing it. When you look at the reference, the eye is actually the eye here on the left is actually a little bit lower than the eye on the right. So I do make that adjustment. I'm already kind of doing the brow shapes here of the shadow patterns. I'm doing a little bit of both, thinking about anatomy, thinking about structure, thinking about shadow, and design. All of that with the end in mind already. I'm juggling a lot of things in my mind when I'm drawing all of this stuff. But as I'm doing this, I know that I'm going to end up having to erase that eye because it's much too high again. Now I'm going to be talking a little bit about the nose. I discovered that instead, when I'm drawing the nose, it's better to go a little bit higher than a little bit too low. So, here I am erasing again the eye. So again, I was just really quickly about the nose. If when you I found that it's that a lady, a pretty lady, when drawing a pretty lady, it's better to err on the side of making the nose a little bit shorter than I thought, than longer. And there goes the eye, because I realized that the eye is supposed to be a touch lower than it needs to be. So I'm already messing up quite a bit. When I say messing up, I mean I'm erasing a lot, and that is messing up. And I don't mean that it's wrong to be erasing. What I mean is that because this is going to be using watercolor on watercolor paper, you want to erase as little as possible, because if you erase too much on this watercolor paper, it's going to lift up the fibers and ruin the paper that you're supposed to be painting on. So it is extremely inadvised to be erasing a lot, and I am erasing way too much. Okay, but I kept messing up, and what am I gonna do? I had to make sure that it was working. So again, drawing the nose, I'm drawing the nose shorter and stouter, and not as low as I felt like it ought to be. So I made sure that the nose was a little bit shorter than I would have naturally made it. And I'm putting in the planes here, and here I am going to do a little bit of cheating, and I'm going to add a cartoony cartoony eyelashes here. They're not very natural. They're actually an extreme caricature of eyelashes. And I found that when I do that, they actually look okay. They don't look cartoony. Now I draw the Philtrum, and and I made a bit of a mess there. And the Philtrum, I'm going to lighten it up here. I would not have lightened it up if I wasn't making a video, but I decided to lighten it up there and redraw it and clarify it, because just for the clarity of the video here. But what I would have done had I not been filming it, I would have simply done fixed it when I did the line work, when I did the inking job. I would have fixed it then. So doing the mouth here with the mouth shapes. So I'm doing a few things with the mouth here. On the one hand, I'm drawing the mouth construction and almost fully what the mouth actually is. And and then midway through, I decide to simply do the shadow masses. And the plane changes. So I don't completely do the whole construction of the mouth. I just do the shadow shapes. So one of the things that I'm drawing here, the way that I'm drawing, and then you're going to see later uh, where I tend to draw things um, either depending on my confidence level. Depending on my confidence level about a certain area, I either really, really, really work it out, or I just draw the shadow patterns. Really quick here, this is what makes a Rembrandt portrait, is this shape here, this light shape, which shows this shadow plane here coming down here, and then the shadow of the nose, and then the plane of the side of the head. That kind of triangular light shape is what makes a Rembrandt light, a person lit in a Rembrandt way, in a way Rembrandt shape. Sorry about the extreme glare here of so that you can't actually see what I'm doing. But had you been seeing what I was doing, you'd see that I'm kind of creating I'm drawing the hair shape, but I was also drawing the graphic shape of the light on the hair. So there's a streak of light that you can see in the reference, and then once the line clarifies from the glare, you're going to see it. But I did a little bit of a graphic. It's kind of like almost like an S shape, and it's the glare is something that I hadn't anticipated, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to have the camera not blow out so insanely the paper. It's actually quite irritating. But I think by the time I move my hand out of the way, and then you'll see what the results. But you can't see it here. But again, what I'm doing is I'm drawing. I drew a hair mass shape, and now I'm drawing the shape of the light on the hair. So it's just like a weird kind of a graphic shapes of light, where the light makes shapes, and that is what I'm going to be. That's what I was doing there on the head. Now I'm coming down the neck, and I'm drawing the graphic shape of the neck shadow, the shadow shape. So what I was going to say earlier about, and there you can see the hair, and you can see some of the graphic shapes that I was doing there on the hair. Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, especially here, is that whenever I am not 100% sure of an area, that is when I start working through the anatomy, the construction, and really working through that sort of thing. Whenever I'm very, very confident of the anatomy of a part of a body part, I tend to just do the graphic lighting and the negative and positive shapes. But whenever I get into an area that is that is in my mind vague, or I'm not 100% sure of it, that is when I decide to break it down into construction. And the reason why that is, if I already know what that area is and what's going on and how it works, any graphic shapes that I create, automatically I'm automatically drawing those things in such a way that it explains to the audience what that area is. However, if I do not know that, I have to work it out myself first in order to be able to communicate those areas to the viewer. So Because drawing is communication, the first thing I need to do is know what the blazes is going on. If I don't know what's going on, I cannot communicate what's going on to the person that's viewing the drawing. Therefore, I have to solve the problem, understand what the problem is, understand what's going on, and then and only then can I create some kind of graphic representation that explains it to the person who's looking at the drawing. So on this shoulder connection with the arm, I had to do that. I really broke it down into planes and construction and anatomy for myself so that I understood what was actually going on, because I got into a lot of trouble. I got into a lot of trouble here. I am now just making slight adjustments to the brow shapes and the brow areas so that they're more graphic and so that they're more graphically represented and clearly represented. So I think I'm done with the line drawing. This is basically what this is as far as I take it. Notice that on the left hand side there is no anything. There's no I left it completely blank. I didn't draw the rest of it. I just left it blank. And the reason I did that is because that part is going to be black anyway. Like, see, look at the reference. It's lost. That's called a lost edge. So I'm not even going to be concerned about that. And I am going to now take an Instagram picture of my drawing process. If you do not know that I am on Instagram, my Instagram is Luis Escobar Art, and that is so if you search for that, you will see my Instagram page there. And I tend to just kind of post some of the process drawings of some of these postcards there, if you want to at least see a slightly better, clearer version of this. That isn't blown out in the light from this particular video. All right, so now it's time to add the ink. So what I'm doing here is I am shaking the ink because the pigment gets the sediment of the pigment ends up at the bottom of the bottle. So I've got to shake the snot out of the ink. The problem with shaking the ink is that it gets bubbly. So see, it's got like bubbles. Yeah, so that's a problem. And but just to let you know, I'm using brown ink there. So I'm gonna dip my quill into the brown ink. And the reason why I use brown ink is because brown is kind of like it fits well with skin tones and values. It's warm enough so that it feels like skin. And you could put red on it, and it'll still, and the brown still kind of complements, and it works with the value or the hue of just about any color. And there's again my rags. I'm going to be using the rag to clean my quill, and I'll actually use this tiny small one. And you can see that I use that even for watercolor. It's just a paper towel. And this is what I clean my quill in. I just dump it in there and clean it. Okay, so but brown is a good like neutral skin tone. If I was painting a light-skinned person, I would still use brown. If I was painting a dark-skinned person, I still use brown. So it still works. It's a good feeling neutral color. Okay, so the point here that I'm doing. Okay, so first of all, the fact that I'm using a crow quill. Why a crow quill is because it's so, this particular crow quill nib is allows me to get a very, very fine line. And the reason why also I'm adding line work, even though I'm going to paint it with watercolor, is just out of experimentation, I decided to try doing this just to see what would happen. And what I discovered is that when by and not through, I'm not going to ink the whole thing as if it was a comic, but what I'm doing, even though you can't actually see it, which is extremely irritating, but is I'm only using the crow quill to ink any hard edge. By hard edge, I mean when a plane of the face comes to an abrupt stop, or is being pinched into darkness, and seems to be making a line. That is the only places that I'm going to be drawing a line on. Any part of the face or in the shadow shape that is going to fade or be a soft edge, the transition is soft, and it fades right into another part of the face, and there is no abrupt stop at all, but just there's a fading shape, a fade. That is what where I'm not going to put a line. So you can see in the eye right there, you could see in the eye right there where I've put the hard edges and where I've actually not drawn any line at all. So here I'm going to put a few hard edges here in the on the upper, above the upper brow, right below the forehead. Unfortunately, you can't see it. I'm going to have to adjust my my light moving. The next time I do this, if I do this again, I'm definitely going to have to adjust my light so that it's a little bit, I don't know, less direct on the page. But on the nose, on the edge of the nose, where that's a spot I'm going to put a shadow. See, so right there, the edge of the nose, the Philtrums, I put that. There's on the nostril, I put a hard edge. At the bottom, underneath the eye, there's a fold there, and then I put a hard edge there. The iris of the eye, the top of the brow, some of the shadow, the cast shadow of the nose in the Rembrandt area, I will put a hard edge there. There's going to be the plane of the cheek. There's going to be a very, very slight hard edge, and then you'll see all of that as I'm inking. I'm actually doing a lot of the painting process by drawing the. So there, I put that. See, so you can see where I left it blank and where I put a hard edge. Right here on this is the mouth area, so the top of the lips are going to get a hard edge. Where the two lips meet, there's going to absolutely be a hard edge, and it's a hard edge shadow. So I put I create you can see it there that I'm actually creating a mouth shadow shape on the top. Then there's a hard edge on the where the lips meet, and definitely underneath the lips and right on the chin there's a hard edge. Right above the chin there's a hard edge, and then there's right below the chin there's a hard edge. So you can see me drawing it there. There are some hard edges on the neck, not everywhere, but in some areas. You could also see, by the way, that there's a hard edge on the hair that I drew up above. So here you could finally see what I'm doing. Just some hard edges in some areas, but not hard edges everywhere. Here, for sure, all the way in the back, like the back of the body, gets a full-on hard edge because it's such a abrupt change of value. Some areas, like underneath, there would be a soft edge on the above, and some hard edges below, and so there's a lot of like really just being judicious, looking at the reference, saying, well, here's a hard edge, here's not. So but again, like, you can see it now that I've done all the little intricacies. So I'm just being very, very careful as to thinking about where I'm going to put the soft and the hard edges. The hair would be a hard edge. And so why am I doing this? And again, I discovered kind of an accident, because I started doing this and then I realized, oh, I see, this is how I ought to have done it. Having done this kind of line work thing before, is that when doing watercolor, I found that creating a hard edge for myself was a little bit difficult, and the contrast between hard, soft, and firm is such an interesting, fun element that when I've been experimenting with just doing line and then coloring it, I realized that if I already have like a line with a hard edge and I paint up to that line, it makes the hard edge pop more, which means that when I do soft edges, they work better. The contrast works better. And here I am cleaning my quill, and I immediately dry it off so it doesn't get rusted. So I wiped off all the ink, and there you go. So it's nice and clean. It's ready to go. And so I'm done. I'm done with just doing the line work. So some areas have lines, some areas don't. Notice the neck is empty of hard edges, but like at the very bottom there's some hard edges. So now is kind of like where it all comes together. It starts to really it's like magic. This is where the inking part comes in. This feels a lot like inking. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get the brown, and I'm going to use the brown, and I'm going to do something very experimental that I'd never done before for so far in this. And I'm going to grab the brown, and right now I'm squeezing water into the brush. And then I have a purple up here. Now I could have mixed the purple, but I decided to be lazy. I'm just going to use the purple, and I'm going to mix the purple with the brown, and I'm going to get a weird kind of purplish brown, kind of reddish brown, which is something I've never done before. And because I don't know what's going to happen, I'm going to start over in the safest place in the painting, which is not even on the figure, but in the background. And I like the way I'm like, oh wow, okay, well, it's okay. I don't mind the color. I'll use it and see what happens. And see, at this point, see, when I'm painting, it goes all the way up to the edge, and because I did a line, the hard edge just is really, really, really sharp. And by the way, I just kind of blew it. I kind of made a mistake there on that right line. I accidentally put a line there, but it's okay. And there. So now all I have to do is color in the lines. Uh-oh. So right there on the top of the eye, I think I messed up. No, I didn't. It's in the other eye that I messed up. But, well, I'll show you when I mess up. Because then I have to fix it. But anyway, at this point, all I'm doing is filling in the blanks. Filling in the black. So, I have to be very, very careful in these areas here. But once the further out I get, the more sloppy I can get, so I could get more of a painterly look to the strokes. I could just be really sloppy and have fun with the strokes here. But when I'm going up to the line, I have to be mindful of my my hard edge, and because I've gone out of my way to make sure that the hard edges are hard, and I don't want to overstep them. That's the entire point. So as you can already see from here, it's already starting to come together. It's like magic. And this is one of the fun part. This is the fun part, because all this time I'm doing prep work. I'm imagining what it may look like, and I'm not sure. And it's all in my head. It's all the procedure. I know what I want. I know what it may turn out to be, but I have to put the foundation, the prep work, so that it will come together once I start filling in the values in here. So I can be a little bit sloppy over here because there's some soft edges here, and that's okay. So at this point over here, I'm actually running out of pigment, and I'm going to have to remix my original pigment. And that means because that means that I may not get the exact same color variation that I had originally, but I'm doing that right now off screen. I'm remixing. I'm getting more brown, and I'm getting more purple, and I'm mixing it up again. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to paint the top up here. And this is a completely new mixture, combination of those colors, and it doesn't quite match, but that's, I think, part of the charm. That's part of the thing that makes traditional is the slight imperfections and inconsistencies of color, that makes it what it is. That gives it its flavor. So I'm not going to go all the way to the edges. I'm going to try to keep some of that brush stroke stuff in here. And then I realized, oops, I hadn't even done this eye. So I come in here, and then I'm not supposed to fill all the way to the end, because that line that I filled up to actually is not supposed to be filled. So I have to come back in here and erase. I kind of messed up. So I'm going to erase now. So I'm going to wipe out all the paint from my brush, and I'm going to come in here and just put water in there and lift up that paint by re-wetting that area, and I'm just going to lift it up, and now it's erased. So there. That line was meant to stay as a line. It was not meant to be colored in. So That's that one of the things about watercolor is that it's extremely forgiving if you catch it right away, and even if you don't, you can sort of wipe out. See how I painted just a touch and then I left it as a line. Um, that was the intent. It's very forgiving when it comes. You just re-wet it and then lift the paint, and you can often get back to white or back to what you kind of wanted. And I find that really fun and exciting and nice about watercolor. Here I'm doing a soft edge. I'm because there's the hard edge is an abrupt. See how I'm kind of softening these edges here. I'm kind of making sure that those edges actually do transition. There's kind of like a soft kind of a blurriness to it. It doesn't come to an abrupt end the way that that the hard edges do. So there we go. And I'm just adding a little bit anywhere that I missed the dark areas that are meant to be dark. I'm trying to pop in that. I'm trying to pop in those dark areas, and I would wet the brush and have it be mostly watery, and then I would dip it into the pigment in order to get like a half tone. So it's not as strong as the original direct wash. Here I went much more direct, so it's a little bit darker. Here I need this darker, I need this darker here. Any place that needs to be extremely dark, I go directly into the main mixture. Any time that I need it to be a little bit more mid-tony, a little bit there needs to be a little bit less of a direct dark area like I'm doing here. What I do is I squeeze a little bit of water out of the water brush, then I kind of quickly touch the paint, and it's so watery that I get a much more diffused version of the pigment. While if I want it to be darker, what I do is I get my rag, I wipe out as much water as I possibly can from the water brush, and then I dip the water brush directly into the pigment mixture of the paint, like right here, and then it gets much darker. You just get it just has a much darker effect. Like I said, I'd wipe out. Oh, and I messed up here, so I'm gonna quickly just erase and even make a little bit of a mid-tone there. But I wipe the water off of my water brush, and then I dip it directly into the main pigment, and it comes out much darker. So now I'm going to add some French blue into and mix it up into the brown and purple mix. Because what I want is this is not dark enough now. Like now that I've already done all of this stuff, I need this to be a little bit darker. Like all of this, the value needs to be a little bit darker still. So as you can see, once I added blue, the blue increases the value of the mixture that I originally created. It actually makes the value of that mixture even darker still. And what that does is it makes the area that I want your eye to go to pop more. So I'm just adding that extra dark value to all the areas of the face where on the in the reference you can see that there are, in the shadow areas, there are areas in the shadow that are darker than other areas in the shadow. So even though there all those masses are shadow, in the shadow itself there are variations of darkness and light within the shadow. So what I'm doing here is I'm noting that, and I'm going to add a darker value only in the areas that in the reference the shadow is darker still. Like that way there is variation even in the shadow areas, and also it gives me an excuse to darken some of those features. And what I want is a lot of this facial area to start to pop. And it's okay to go over these areas again and again and again, and layer more color and more value on top, as long as you know that what you're doing is actually adding value. I messed up. I'm wiping out my water brush, putting just water and trying to wipe out my mess up there. But again, like I said, I added blue to the area to the pigment to make it a little bit darker. This French blue, like the thing about the French blue that I'm using is that it's a little bit joyless. There's a little bit of not quite. It's not a very bright blue, but it is a very almost grayish blue. The French gray. The French blue. So here I am. Because I did the face and I added an extra layer of value of darkness to that face, it looked weird if it was only in the face and not on the other side. So I went in and I started adding that extra layer of value around the face too, and in certain areas it just wherever it felt like it needed it, I started adding it. And what that does is it started to frame the face a little bit more. And as you can see, I'm being pretty sloppy with this stuff, because at this point I kind of want to have that energetic feel to the drawing here. And again, I'm just darkening, and I end up like just darkening the areas more, like the eye, mouth, nose areas, because they're where you're gonna be looking at the most. I just go back to them again and again and again with another layer of value, making it a little bit darker. But I also noticed that I perhaps needed some midtones in here as well, just for variation, just so that it's not just too stark black and white. So and as you will see, I'm gonna go over on the value scale one more time. I'm gonna actually go in directly to the French gray, but right now what I was looking at here is that the face probably needed some midtones. So I decided that I was going to wipe my brush clean. I was going to squeeze a lot of water out, and then I was going to touch the edges of the pigment that I had on my palette, and I was going to just place whatever light wash of paint was in the brush. And you can, unfortunately, this is a little bit blown out, but it's very subtle. There's definitely a very light mid-tone that I'm putting on everything here. I wanted a little bit mid-tone here and in the eyes, because that area was a little bit further away from the light, and here on the edges, and that spot right there, that needs to be dark. And so what I ended up accidentally doing was wetting it way too much, because there's so much water in that area. I couldn't get the dark area the way I wanted it to. It just kept bleeding. So here now that I'm looking at it from the camera, it doesn't look so bad. But in real life, it didn't look good. So I ended up wiping that away, and then trying again. I accidentally wiped it away. Actually, trying to put this mid-tone in here, I accidentally wiped it away. And here I was putting this mid-tone, and I put it too hard, and I had to just soften it up. Oh, this is where I wiped it away. See, I accidentally wiped it away, so I had to come back and put it back in. Boom, there you go. But I put direct blue, and see, look how bright that blue is. Oops, it's not supposed to be that. Okay, I gotta get rid of it. Kind of neutralize it by putting more brown in there. There you go. Now it looks a little bit grayer. That's much better. So if you put a really saturated blue in there, it looks awful. It contrasts way too much with the rest of the thing, and it feels more natural to have a neutral blue than a full-blown bright blue. And I did add a little bit I added a little bit more blue to the mixture on the palette in here, and I think it's just to darken it even more. In fact, later on, I actually come in and I directly dip into the blue paint, and I just straight on put the paint on, and you'll see that when it happens. But here I am again just putting a very, very light mid-tone on everything. Again, very watery brush. I put the water, I squeezed the water out of the brush. I'm touching very lightly the pigment on my palette, and just kind of letting whatever barely tinted color is there. So whenever you see me painting on the white area, it's because it's very watery. It's very low value tone, except here. So I was having, I liked that little edge, that little corner on the side of the mouth, but my that area was way too wet, and my brush was way too wet. So I needed to wait for it to dry, that area to dry, and then I was going to mix some more pigment so that I could get that curve of the mouth. See, I'm gonna dry out that area by just dabbing it with my rag. Then I'm going to wipe out all the water from my brush. Then I'm going to put it in the pigment and then touch it right there, because I needed it to be much darker. I wanted that to be darker. And I think that's it. I think I may go over it one more time later. But here I thought needed maybe a little bit of mid-tone, just a little bit of a soft edge and transition here, and a little bit of mid-tone. This is generally the general final result of the painting. We were already getting to that point. At this point, I'm looking at little areas that maybe need a little bit more value, a little bit more dark. In fact, I think I go over and just put more dark. Oh, here actually, on the contrary, I'm putting white paint in these areas. This is gouache. This is white gouache, because I thought that they needed to pop out more. And I even put a little highlight with the white gouache. I needed to make sure to double layer that so it's at least visible. I could have used white ink, but this time around I'd used gouache instead. And I think I overdid it with the gouache. It went over an area that I didn't want to, so I went back in with the dark and reinforced that edge. And that seems to be generally it. There are just slight adjustments. Just putting in a little bit more blue, putting in a little bit more value. There, so this is direct. This is actually the blue paint directly from the palette. No mixing, just putting in the blue from the palette. And as you can see, it suddenly gets really, really bright. But it also enhances and darkens because the fact that I layered it on top of the this kind of grayish tone, it darkens it for sure, but it also gives it a little bit of punch because now we've actually got some blue color in here. And it complements, because there's not a lot of it, it complements the face. And it makes it a little bit darker. And it gives it a good effect. It goes from being completely neutral to having some dashes of color, some dashes of saturation, I should say. And that kind of complementary element of everything is kind of normal, kind of neutral to suddenly having just a little bit of extra saturation. It works. It feels good. If there's something about it, it was unintentional on my part of doing that. Really, my intention was just to make it darker. And I gotta back in there with that little area of the mouth. So my intention was simply to make it those areas a little bit darker, but by going directly with the blue. And if it was way too blue, what I would have done is I would have gone and dipped my brush directly into the brown and then muted it down. But I decided I didn't need to do that because I liked the way it looked. So that's it. That's the painting. So hopefully you got a lot out of this. This sort of painting to me is so much fun. I really, really enjoy it. One of the reasons why I enjoy it is because it's almost mindless. I already know what I need to do. All I have to do is observe the reference, and I don't have to invent anything, which is great. So that's why I do enjoy doing these things off a reference. Drawing something from reference is a fun exercise because it doesn't require a lot of I don't want to say brain power because I'm thinking the whole time, but the drawing the reference already tells you where you're going, so you don't have to work so hard trying to come up with something from your mind. It's already there. All you got to do is observe. So and then you just and then the rest is just play. It's just like a meditation. So yeah, so that's it. And here I am just continuing to add just tiny little touches because I can't help myself. But in general, I'm done. As you can see, this is the final drawing. Oh, here, this ear. Okay, so the ear was, for me, it was popping up too much. So I came in and I just kind of, it gets a little bit muddy, but it's okay because I didn't want, I don't want that ear to stick out while with the rest of the face, when in reality it's receding into the hair. So yeah, that was the ear thing. Okay, so that's it from me. Thanks you so much. I hope you've gotten a lot out of this, and I will talk to you next time. Gotta fix that little bit here. Okay, there. All right, bye.